Well, returning to federal politics and Julia Gillard's unexpected offer to debate Tony Abbott for a second time as she lags in the polls. To discuss that and other issues in the campaign today, I was joined a short time ago from Adelaide by the Shadow Education Minister, Christopher Pyne. Christopher Pyne, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Lee.
Julia Gillard said tonight that she'd be willing to have a second debate against Tony Abbott. He's said that he's unlikely to accept, but you've been calling for more debates. Why not accept?
Well, Tony Abbott wanted to have the 3 debates that the Labor Party promised to have in the 2007 election that they said was vital for democracy, which they then rejected at the beginning of the election because they thought they didn't need to have any debates, believing that they were ahead in the polls and would therefore win the election. Now, Julia Gillard's campaign is quite clearly off the rails. We had more evidence of that today when she was trying to trick people into believing that somehow she was listening to the faceless men of the Labor Party. Now she isn't listening to the faceless men of the Labor Party, saying she was the real Julia today, the fake Julia yesterday. The point that people made to me today was, how do we know whether she's tricking us now? So she wants to have another debate because she thinks that will help her get her campaign back on the rails. But we're not in the business of jumping to the tune of the faceless men of the ALP. They've told Julia Gillard she needs to have another debate. Tony Abbott's schedule is basically locked in. He has a plan to visit electorates right across Australia right up to election day. And we have a whole lot of other priorities that are more important than salvaging Julia Gillard's disintegrating campaign.
But schedules can always be changed, as we both know, and regardless of the Prime Minister's motives, you've been asking for 3 debates. Why not take up this opportunity?
Well, the Labor Party had a chance to have 3 debates in the election campaign. They thought they were being clever by rejecting the opposition's call for them to keep their own promise. Now that they are in free fall in terms of their disintegrating campaign, they're demanding that the opposition jump to their tune. Well, the faceless men of the ALP might run Julia Gillard, but they don't run the Liberal Party. Tony Abbott runs the Liberal Party. He's the leader of the opposition, and he has a schedule of events planned right through to election day, and we are not going to simply change our schedule just because the faceless men of the ALP have told Julia Gillard, you need a debate to salvage your campaign.
Well, you say they're in free fall, but conversely, is Tony Abbott now scared to debate Julia Gillard now that he has the upper hand in the polls? Is it a case of nothing to gain, everything to lose?
Look, Julia Gillard said 5 weeks ago that the government had lost its way. Now she's admitted today that the campaign for the Labor Party has lost its way.
Well, that doesn't address my question. Is Tony Abbott scared to debate her now?
Well, I think the proof of the pudding has been in the eating. Tony Abbott wanted to keep the debates going on Channel 9 on the Today Show every Friday morning. As soon as Julia Gillard became Prime Minister, the faceless men of the ALP told her to stop those, so she did. Tony Abbott was more than happy to keep them going every Friday. Then Tony Abbott said he'd be prepared to have 3 debates. Julia Gillard had been part of the government's promise to have 3 debates. They squibbed it. Now they're demanding another debate in yet another sign of the desperation of the ALP campaign, and we aren't going to jump to the tune of the people who are running the ALP campaign out of ALP headquarters.
They will accuse you, though, of course, of running scared, given how many times you have called for there to be more debates.
Well, there's only one campaign that is running scared in this campaign at the moment, Lee, and that is the Labor Party campaign, with Julia Gillard bizarrely today describing herself as real Julia, and yesterday was apparently fake Julia, and for 5 weeks has apparently been fake Julia. But the number one question is she telling the truth now, or was she telling the truth yesterday? And I don't think the public are going to put up with this pantomime of an ALP government for very much longer. The public are getting very sick of an incompetent, dysfunctional, disintegrating government full of the most poisonous people you can imagine in politics. It's time to change the government, stop the boats, reduce the debt and deficit, and put the government in the hands of people who've done it all before and done it well.
On this issue to do with the real Julia, Tony Abbott admitted to Laurie Oakes yesterday that he has to keep aspects of his nature under control during the campaign, specifically his tendency to go further than he should in the heat of the moment. So when will we be seeing the real Tony Abbott, given that he's keeping a lid on certain things?
Look, Tony Abbott's been in public life for 17 years. He was obviously a senior cabinet minister in the Howard government. He's now the leader of the opposition. I think the public have a very good idea of Tony Abbott and the kind of person that he is. There's a big difference between being a senior member of a government and cabinet and also being leader of the opposition and a alternative prime minister.
Mr Pyne,
Tony Abbott's made that very clear.
People may have felt that they had a handle on who Tony Abbott was, but he's changed his positions on a range of issues, from immigration to emissions trading to paid parental leave to industrial relations. Well, how do we know who the real Tony Abbott is? Is it the Tony Abbott of 12 months ago? Is it the Tony Abbott of 5 minutes ago?
Well, Lee, one of the very endearing features of Tony Abbott, and I've known him for 17 years and had dinner with him many times over that 17 years, is that he is one of the most open and transparent people in politics. What you see with Tony Abbott is what you get. If Tony Abbott wins the election, Tony Abbott will be Prime Minister. If Julia Gillard wins the election, we don't know if fake Julia or real Julia will actually have won the election and who the Prime Minister will be. As Tony Abbott said today, would the real Julia Gillard please stand up, because people are getting very confused and bewildered about the choice they're being offered on August 21.
The Liberal Party's been at pains to stay on message with the line that the Labor Party treated Kevin Rudd badly, that he deserved more respect. Yet on the weekend, the former Liberal heavyweight Alexander Downer described Kevin Rudd as an effing awful person and explained why in some detail. How annoyed are Liberals with Alexander Downer for derailing or undermining your strategy like that?
Well, I don't think Alexander Downer has done that. What Alexander Downer was pointing out, I think, and the resonance with the electorate has been that Labor is quite a poisonous, dysfunctional group of people. They have very little like for each other, and that goes back for many years. This is not a function just of the knifing of Kevin Rudd by the faceless men of the ALP using Julia Gillard to do it.
But what Alexander Downer said about Kevin Rudd being such a dreadful person does surely undermine your message that Kevin Rudd is worthy of respect and that he's a bit of a victim in the whole thing.
I think what it does is underlines that the poisonous relationships within the Labor Party go back many years. Mark Latham has highlighted that in the last 4 weeks, calling Kevin Rudd a snake and so forth. Julia Gillard has admitted today that the faceless men of the ALP put her there, have been running her campaign, and now she expects us to believe that she's apparently going to take charge of it 2.5 weeks into the campaign. What Alexander Downer has done, of course, is gone back through the history of the poisonousness that is the Labor Party and why they have been so dysfunctional, why they could butcher a Prime Minister in his first term of office, believing that would trick the public into voting Labor on August 21. That's why Julia Gillard has called an early election, because she thought she'd capitalise on a honeymoon period. What they're finding in the ALP, and what I'm finding out on the ground, is that the Australian public are not fooled. They're very sceptical of what happened to Kevin Rudd. They don't approve of it, and they want to see a government that's stable, that brings down debt and deficit, that protects our borders and that reduces pressures on cost of living.
OK, let's turn to education policy. The government's announcement today about giving school principals more autonomy and the Coalition's plans. The Coalition's education policy is expected to also include a move towards giving school principals more autonomy. Presumably that means you would welcome Julia Gillard's announcement today.
Well, Lee, the Coalition has a very long-standing support for principal autonomy. When we were in government, we established the Investing in Our Schools program, where we paid the money under that program directly to schools.
So you would welcome this?
Hang on, we've been committed to supporting principals by paying them directly to manage the school hall stimulus program. And we have done throughout the last 18 months. We have been saying that the government should bypass the states and pay the government schools as they are paying the non-government schools the school stimulus program. Labor today, 3 weeks before an election, is asking the public to believe that even though they've had 3 years to support principal autonomy, we should forget their history and trust them to deliver a promise after the election. Now, I know that the Australian Education Union and the states will never let this happen. The Labor states will never let it happen under Labor, because Labor wants to use the states to roll out the program. If Julia Gillard believed that the principals should be given autonomy, why didn't she pay the BER money directly to government schools as she did to non-government schools.
But given that
Given
she's now announced this policy that you say similar to what you've had, why do you simply not say that you welcome the policy, welcome the change? It's what you've been wanting.
Well, Lee, I welcome anybody joining the coalition in supporting principal autonomy. What I do say to the public, though, is do you really believe that a leopard can change its spots 3 weeks before an election as a desperate political ploy? And that is what this is. And if Simon Crean really wanted to do the right thing, he would announce today that the BER money will be directly funded to the school principals to manage themselves.
The Coalition has said that it would revise the My Schools website. Can you explain to the parents who flocked to that service why they should no longer have access to that information?
I believe that the NAPLAN program, the testing of literacy and numeracy, the results of that, should be available to principals and to teachers and to parents on the My Schools website. But it should be available in a way that is not easily misinterpreted and misunderstood and misused.
So what would that way be?
Well, the experts tell me that while the NAPLAN is a very useful diagnostic tool, it is being adulterated by the publication of the raw data. And therefore, leagues tables are being created, parents and principals and teachers are misunderstanding a lot of the information. What we would do in the Coalition is only publish the improvement from year to year so that there was an inbuilt incentive in the My Schools website and the NAPLAN testing to include all the students in the actual tests.
But what's the point of only... Sorry to interrupt there, but what's the point of only publishing the improvement? Don't parents want to know everything about their school? You'd want to know if your school wasn't improving. You'd want to know if your school was going backwards. Why only publish the improvement?
Well, what you want to know, the experts in education tell me, Lee, is that your school is getting better year by year, and so are the results. Now, I'm the father of 4 children. I know that what I want to know from my school is that every year the children are improving their literacy and numeracy and the school's performance is getting better. Right now, that information is not available on the My Schools website.
But don't you think as a parent, though, that you'd want the raw data about just the school's overall performance, improving or not improving?
No, because I'm not an education expert. I'm not... don't have the skills to determine whether the raw data actually tells me anything useful. I want to know whether my school is improving. I'll tell you this, what is happening because of the way the government has structured the My Schools website and the NAPLAN testing is that children with special needs, children with dyslexia, children who are struggling in the classroom are being told to stay home from school on the day of the NAPLAN tests. I know the damage that is doing to families and to the social fabric of communities. And that is because teachers and principals in some schools are terrified of bad results. If you are only publishing the improvement, Lee, there'd be an incentive for those children to do the tests year by year because they'd be the ones who could improve the fastest. And yet the government is not doing that. And that is what the Coalition will do.
Christopher Pyne, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure, Lee.